Hi, I'm Jim McNamer, and today I'd like to introduce you to a hidden wonder of the world known as home bread making. Now, like many of you, this recent quarantine effect has left me with too much time and, well, frankly, no job. So, today we'll be exploring the world of bread making, and I'll be teaching you how to create your very own loaf of sandwich bread. The beauty of bread making, and the wonder that I want to get across to you in this educational video, brought to you by your local broadcasting agency, is that bread making is an essential art form, handed down from generation to generation, until apparently recently, when no one knows how to make bread anymore. So, to bridge that gap, I've taken up the art of bread making. I only know how to make one loaf of bread, and I'd consider myself an expert in the form. I've made over 8 loaves of bread, and today I will be embarking on the 9th. So come with me, and we'll find out together how wonderful homemade bread can really be. All right, we have all the ingredients. Let's get started. Well, here we are. Welcome to the McNamer household kitchen. You'll notice this kitchen is fairly state-of-the-art. It was custom made over 20 years ago. Now that's high tech. Now your kitchen may not be this up to date, but that's okay. This bread making technique will work almost anywhere. Outside, inside, on your roof, under your roof. You can tell this kitchen is high tech if you just notice the appliances. The dishwasher, the refrigerator, the stove, and the microwave. They're color coordinated. Now today we'll be making a honey wheat bread. It's like wheat, but with honey, and honey is sweet. We'll also be using oats in today's recipe. It will be a central component. These are 100% whole grain, old-fashioned oats. You may be wondering, Jim, why are we using oats in a bread? Well, oats make everything better. Don't believe me? Never heard of honey bunches of oats? Well, without the oats, they would just be honey bunches, and that would be ridiculous. So we'll be using oats. Now the first step in bread making is going to be heating the milk. Now, for this recipe, it originally called for 1.25 cups. I found that the bread was too dry and often cracked. Now, if you don't know what cracked bread looks like, it's just unpleasant to the eye. So I've upped the recipe to 1 cup and 1/2 cup. That way we get a bit more moist bread. That's not exactly 1 cup, a little bit over. More never hurt anyone. Now, since we overdid it on the 1 cup, we're gonna go a little below the 1/2 cup margin. Great, right on the line. Excellent. Now you'll notice there's a thermometer in my pot right now. What we're going to do now is heat the milk to exactly 115 degrees. This stove is high tech. Please, don't mind me. Now, we'll watch the thermometer, and once it hits 115 degrees, we will take it and put it into a mixing bowl. You can use any kind of bowl, really. This bowl will not be used for anything other than mixing the ingredients. We'll go ahead and wash out our cup while we're waiting. I like to keep a sanitary kitchen. That's what they call us McNamers, sanitary. We'll leave that here. And we'll go ahead and watch this and make sure it's not getting too warm. Granted, it's only been 30 seconds. And now we're going to get our bowl. I like to use this large metal mixing bowl. Just like that. And now we're going to wait. Now it looks like our milk has reached a solid 115 degrees. We're gonna go ahead and turn the heat off. Take the thermometer out. Our counters are clean. We're gonna leave that there. And come with me, we're gonna bring it over here to the mixing bowl. Spin it around, get a good grip. And we're gonna dump the milk into the mixing bowl. Go ahead and leave the pot on the stove. And here's where the important part comes in. You gotta be quick. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take our oats. Now this is important. We wanna get the oats in the warm milk first. That way they cook slightly. We want a soft oat. When you eat bread, you do not want crunchy oats. I'm gonna have 1/3 cup of whole grain oats. I'm gonna put that right into the milk, just like that, and just a tad bit more. All right, maybe just a little bit more. There we go. Absolutely, I'm gonna leave that there. Now, we're going to need a spoon to stir this with. I'll bring your attention to your choice of utensils. You can use a slotted spoon, but I warn you, when the dough thickens, it's gonna get a little messy. I like to use a solid wooden spoon. You can pick these up anywhere. So we're gonna come back over here. We're going to put our spoon into the mixture, and next up, yeast. Now, this is important. None of that dry, active yeast garbage. This is instant yeast. We're gonna add that in. Go ahead and rip your package. Let it fall right in. And we're going to put that into the trash. And last but not least in this step, the honey. Now, I've been working out. Now, how much honey? Take a small spoon. Just kidding. Take a big spoon. We're gonna take a generous spoonful. Now, I don't like to add a ton of honey into the bread itself. I typically eat the bread with honey. Now, because of this, I don't want an overly sweet bread. So, once you drizzle the honey in, go ahead and get all of it off your spoon by dunking it in the warm milk. Once you're done with that, you don't need the spoon anymore. And we're gonna mix it up just to get the yeast mixed into the warm milk. Once that's done, make sure the honey is off of the bottom of the bowl. And when that's done, go ahead and leave the mixture for 10 minutes. All right, so as far as ingredients go, I like to put all of my ingredients in separate bowls to make it easier when the 10 minutes are up. Now, when the 10 minutes are up, we're going to have to dump these all in very quickly and stir to make a solid, firm dough. So, let's go ahead and start. Unbleached bread flour. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is this a honey wheat if we're using bread flour? I don't know. But we're using bread flour, 2 cups. Now, important thing when you're measuring flour, do not press the flour into the cup. That will take all of the air out of your bread, and it will be too dense, and it will bake unevenly. Next up, we'll be using whole wheat flour. Told you, it's a honey wheat. Now, the ratio is a bit off. We'll only be using 3/4 of a cup. I like to use the 1/4 measuring cup, and we're gonna do 3 of these. Now that we're done with that, we're gonna move on to the smaller ingredients. Make sure you leave your whole wheat flour out. We're gonna use that for the kneading. Now, I've already prepared the butter. We're going to melt it in a moment, but I've been letting it sit at room temperature. You're gonna need 3 tablespoons of butter. We have that. We're going to need exactly 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed. It's a little bit fancy, but it's going to help give the bread some form. Last but not least, we have salt. Now, you're going to need exactly 1 teaspoon of salt. I was never very good at math. Generally got my teaspoons and tablespoons mixed up. All right, so now that the 10 minutes are almost up, you have about 30 seconds. You want to take the butter and you want to melt it. I'm going to put it in there for 41 seconds. Why not 40? I like to be different. Once that's done, we're going to add it along with our other ingredients to the mixture in the bowl. The yeast has risen, and we'll get to creating the dough. All right, 10 minutes are up. Our butter is melted. This is hot now. We're going to add all of this. Don't panic, but it's going to get a little hectic right now. First thing that goes in, butter in. That's done. Set it to the side. Both flours in. Sit those over here. Want those out of the way. Flaxseed, salt, boom. Put those up. Set the butter over here. Time to stir. It's gonna be easy at first. It's gonna trick you. It's gonna get firm. And when it does, you wanna put your forearm into it. Really, really get all the flour mixed into the wetness of the milk. When that happens, your bread will no longer be dry. Now, the only thing I will say with this recipe is the dough is extremely sticky. The kneading process is fairly flour heavy. You're gonna need all that flour to really dry out the excess moisture in the dough. Now, once you figure out that you can't stir this anymore because your forearm is burning, what you're gonna do is set it to the side. Grab your whole wheat flour. What I like to do is make a little pile. Make sure your kneading surface is clean. This countertop was pre-sanitized. Gonna add just a bit more here. We want that on reserve. We don't want to stick our hand with dough on it back into the bag. Once we have that, let's spread some flour here. Get it nice and floured up. Now, here's when the fun comes in. You want to get all of that off the spoon, and we're going to try to pick this up. This, as you can see, is an extremely moist dough, which is great for making bread, but it is kind of a hassle when you're trying to knead it. So use the spoon, try to get as much as you can to begin with. You can get the rest in a moment. With that out of the way, you'll notice it is sticky. And that is a problem unless you knead it thoroughly. Now, to knead it, you're just gonna play with it. It's like Play-Doh, but it's edible. So we're gonna run it across the flour. You'll notice some of it'll stick to the countertop, that's okay. You can pick it back up in a moment. Once you feel yourself running out of flour, bring some from the pile that you made earlier. Go ahead and just pick up all the flour you can. Keep folding it over itself. It'll keep sticking to your hands. That's okay. Now, while we're doing this, I'd like to take the time to tell you a little bit about what's going on in my life. Now, as you may know, I was a park ranger for nearly 3 weeks. I was at the Grand Canyon. Dream job, absolutely wonderful. But, you know, with all the quarantine and such, I'd like to thank the US government for giving me the opportunity to take up bread making. All right, once you're done, it should look something like this. Now what you're gonna do now is inspect it for any cracks. The side that's most cracked, which would be this one, you can see the cracks running through the middle here. You want that to be on the bottom. And you want to take a good sized bolt. Something like this will work. What we're going to do now is we're going to leave this on the counter. Olive oil. That's important. You want to coat the bowl, not too much. And the best way to do that is with your hands. Be careful, don't stain your clothes. Oil stains are in fact the worst. What you want to do, run the oil around the bowl. What this is going to do is it's going to keep the moisture in the bread, and it's going to allow it to rise just a little bit better. Once you're done with that, feel free to wash it off. And what you want to do is get it to about the same size as the bottom of the bowl. Make sure you don't crack it. Shrink it evenly. And you're going to want to coat it in the olive oil. Be careful when you flip it. Don't want to put any cracks. Flip it again. Run your hands down around the sides. Make sure it's ready. And that's that. Welcome home. I like that. Because we are home. And I think it's important that at this time, we really value the sense of home that we have. Now you're going to let this sit in a warm place. I'm going to put it here on the stove. Make sure none of your eyes are burning. That was a mistake. You don't want charred bread or a charred kitchen. And we're going to leave this for exactly 1 hour and 30 minutes. Now, it may rise. If it starts getting too high, go ahead and cut it short, and we'll move on to the next process.
A few moments later.
All right, now that it's been about an hour and a half, the bread has risen. You can see it is bubbling over the top. We'll go ahead and remove the rag. And look at that. You know it's ready when it starts to get about an inch over the top. So we're going to move over here. This is a fairly important task in the art of bread making. You want to punch it, and you want to get a nice cavity. It's important to fold it over. Once you do that, seal up the cavity, and we'll bring it back. Now, typically people will knead it a second time. I don't do that. I knead it well the first time. And that's what it takes to be a true bread master. I would know. Again, I've made over 8 loaves. Well, now this is the 9th, but it counts. Now, important thing, you want to set this aside. This has to be on the bottom. There's a crack here. You don't want that on the top. That goes there. Oil the bread pan, same way we did the bowl. Oil on, just like that. And rub it in with the hands. That's important. You want a nice even coating. If there's any excess oil, pour it out. Be better in the long run. Now that that's done, we take the bread, kind of form it to the shape, be easier. Go ahead and coat it in oil once more, just like that. And we're going to try our best to fix these cracks before we finally put it in to rise one more time. Form it to the bread pan, drop it in. I like to squish it down a bit, let it fill out the pan. Your final product's gonna look a bit like that. Now, once we're here, we bring it right back over to the warm place and cover it over one more time, and we're gonna let it rise for 30 to 45 minutes. It's a long process, but it's worth it in the end. We'll be right back.
One eternity later.
All right, now that it's been about 45 minutes, it's about time to take our bread, which has risen beautifully. It's about 1 inch over the top of the bread pan. We're gonna bring it over here and prepare it for the oven. First thing we're gonna do is take 1 egg. I'm gonna crack that. Now we're gonna whisk. Whisking is a delicate art.
Who can stop me from turning my dreams into a reality? I have the power to make my dreams happen. I have the choice to decide if I will work hard for it or just settle. I have the choice to see how far I can go.
Right. Those who succeed don't believe in limits.
Now when you're done with that, you want to take a brush, like so. And we're just going to coat the top of the bread. Alright, once that's done, you know what? We need more. Think of bread making like an abstract art form. Do what feels right. Unless you're missing a key component, and your bread will suck. Last step. Take a few oats, sprinkle them over the top to give it a beautiful finish. Smell right. You want to preheat the oven to exactly 350 degrees. And we're going to go ahead and set the timer. I'm going to put it in, 34 minutes. Because 35 would be ridiculous. And 33, it won't be done. Before we put the bread in, however, take a pan, cake pan, something like this. Go ahead and fill it up with a little bit of water. Frankly, I'm not quite sure if this does anything, but I like to think it keeps the bread moist as it's cooking. So we're going to go ahead and slide that in on the bottom rack. And we'll be back when the oven preheats and put the bread in.
Later.
Alright, this is what your bread's going to end up looking like right before you put it into the oven. Our oven is preheated to 350 degrees. We've got 34 minutes on the clock. You want to split the direction between the pan with the water and where you put the bread. Put the bread on the top. And now you may think your job's done, but it's not. You want to stay by the bread. It's the love that makes bread real. I like to read to bread. I find that it makes it rise in the oven more. Today we'll be reading from Henry David Thoreau's book, Walnut. Now, Chapter 8, The Village. After hoeing, or perhaps reading and writing,
So much later that the old narrator got tired of waiting and they had to hire a new one.
Chapter 16, The Pond in Winter. After a still winter night, I awoke with the impression that some question had been put to me, which I had been endeavoring in vain to answer in my sleep, as what, how, when, where. But there was dawning nature. Forward. Nature puts no questions in it. Oh, she's ready. Shall we? Go ahead and turn the oven off. Whew. Safety first. We're gonna need some help. Out she comes. I recommend not putting it directly on your counter, given that these are custom made. You're gonna wanna let it cool in the pan for about 5 minutes. If you take it out too early, it changes the texture of the bread. I read that online. So there we have it, a beautiful loaf of honey wheat bread topped with oats. Thank you for joining us today. This video was brought to you by your local broadcasting agency, sponsored in part by Gourmet Classics. Find out more at gourmetclassics.com. Signing off for now, I'm Jim McNamer. Until next time.